Thank you for taking a ride on the Freedom Train podcast series. I am your host, Joseph Ward. I'm riding solo today, but it's all good because, you know, we still keep it moving here on the Freedom Train. And remember, the Freedom Train is brought to you by PACS Inc. That's PACTS-INC. And PACS Inc. is a black advocacy organization aimed at developing the black community to its maximum potential through a focus on education and economics with the traits of hard work, honesty, and integrity. And for more information, make sure you visit www.pactsinc.org to learn more about the organization, its mission, its different initiatives, all of its codes of conduct, and everything that the organization has going on for the 2018 year. Also, while you're online, make sure you visit our Freedom Train website at www.freedomtrainradio.com. That way you learn more about myself, Patrick, Jamie, and the whole Freedom Train family. And that way you can stay in tune or in touch with the lineup that we have. Just briefly give you the lineup. Remember, every Monday you're going to get the Fixed Sports Podcast. Every Wednesday, you're going to get the Freedom Train podcast, and every Wednesday, you also get the live broadcast of Office Hours with Professor Carl Tone Jones and Erica Tolbert. And every Thursday, you get Patrick Irvin's show, Lessons from the Screen. So make sure you tune in, www.freedomtrainradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at Freedom Train Net. Follow us on Instagram at Freedom Train Network. Like our Freedom Train Facebook page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and now Stitcher, which is also a podcast platform, because we out here, and that's how we do it. So today, have a good show for you today. Have a young lady who has been making real boss moves on her own, putting it in the media game, in the publication game. She is the founder and the editor-in-chief of SwagHer Mgazine. So I suggest you get your pen and your pad out and get ready to learn some new things and to learn how to, just improve yourself, because I'm guaranteeing you this is going to be a great one. So we have Miss Francheska Fancy Felder, who I said is the editor-in-chief and the founder of SwagHer Mgazine. So, Fancy, how are you doing today? Thank you, and thank you for being on the Freedom Train. How are you doing?
Greetings. I'm doing great, and thank you all for having me.
No problem. It's always exciting to have new people on the Freedom Train, and just like everybody else, we want to make sure you feel at home. So this is a relaxed atmosphere, so you're at home, and we're going to have a good conversation with you about what you do, because I appreciate what you bring to the table, and I think people like you really need to be supported. So I want to make sure I extend my platform out and we give some light and some attention to you. So all of our listeners, all of our supporters, you're in for a treat today. So I want to so let's go ahead and get into this interview. So as always, we like to start off with our audience knowing a little more background information about you. So if you don't mind, could you tell us a little more about yourself? Why did you choose media and communications as your medium and your resource to become a beacon within the black community?
Okay, well, for starters, I'm originally from Macomb, Mississippi. I am a mother of three. I was a teen mom, and I attended Southern University, and well, for the most part, and I'm a Libra, and I think all of those are like really big elements for me, so I have to, bring attention to that. And when I first started the magazine, like when I started SwagHer Mgazine, I was actually an exotic dancer, and I was trying to, like, come up with an idea for another business because I was interested in club promotions. Like, I love meeting people, planning events, and just, you know, just like, for me, everything is always kind of about a vibe. And so I ended up being introduced to a group of women that were all entrepreneurs. And for me, coming from a small town, and that was in Baton Rouge, but coming from a small town, that was just like, you know, I was in shock because I had never really met any other black women business owners. And so I wanted to find something else, and I would listen to, like, them. And, you know, I was really lost, but I would listen to the stories, and they would just tell me, you know, like, in school we're taught that if you work hard, then you'll achieve whatever it is. But life was, like, teaching me, like, hey, that's not really how it goes. And so I was so inspired by their stories. I thought that other young women needed to hear, you know, like, hey, it's not always this cakewalk, you know. And so I started writing from there.
Oh, that's great. But see, what you just said, I think is important, and like the way you verbalizing, because I say it as when I'm talking to, like, teens and the youth, that, you know, sometimes life gonna kick you in your face and you're gonna get the reality of it. And, you know, we get mad when we're adults because we realize, okay, our parents didn't tell us the whole truth about life. They were, you know, they were trying to protect us. But like you said, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard to be somebody, so you got to be willing to put that work in. And obviously, you were willing to put that work in because, you know, you were where you are. So hats off to you for that.
Thank you.
So out of your experiences, you are a part of women's empowerment, or women's empowerment is something that's important to you. So what led you to becoming the person that's an advocate for women's empowerment?
Well, initially it was just kind of those stories because, like I said, I really felt like people were kind of skipping over chapters, I guess you say, and then just showing the beautiful fairy tale ending, you know. And I realized that there was a lot more to it, and I thought that more people needed to know, especially in particular women. But now I also see that it's men as well. But just trying to, like, communicate that, but also seeing how the media was, like, so influential. I didn't realize that as much until I began to, like, really begin to think of things. Even when, like I said, I started out as an exotic dancer, and I remember, like, T-Pain talking about being in love with a stripper, and that was really how I got into dancing, and I started realizing just all the messages that, you know, that we absorb and don't really realize unintentionally. And so I wanted to put more positive messages out there for black women, and just, you know, for us to realize, like, hey, we're not what the media portrays us to be. We're much more than that, and especially as women, because, I mean, we're mothers, you know, like, we birth everything. So I think it's really important for women to know, I'm not going to say their role, but just to say that we're so much more powerful than we know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very, very, very important, because the society that we live in doesn't really allow for us to really, especially as black people, to know how powerful we are, and especially black women to know how powerful we are, because, you know, young black teenagers know now that if you type black something into Google, most of the images that you're going to get are negative. And so those are some of the things that our youth carry into adulthood. But I do want to ask this on top of that, because, and kind of going back a little bit, where you're talking about you got around this group of women, because I think that's one of the most important pieces to being successful, is meeting the right people who are willing to help you. So what was one of the greatest lessons you learned from that group of women that you still hold to this day, that kind of helped you kind of get that extra boost to become who you are today?
Wow, I would have to say one of those women, well, she was like one of the founders of the group. Her name is Carlin LeBlanc, and right now she's like the owner of Love Like Menu, which is like a women's travel group. But Carlin, I always remember when I interviewed her, she's like one of those realist type of people. So in the middle of the interview, I remember her telling me, you know, like, you have to stop putting people on a pedestal. People are just people. And for me, again, it's a country girl. Like, it took me years to really understand it, but I never forgot it. It always stayed with me. And I had to realize, like, because especially working in media, you can meet people and think, oh, you know, they got this, this, and that. And when, you know, you're wondering, when are you ever going to have that same type of success? Or, you know, you're putting down on yourself and building these other people up. And I had to really, like, begin to see people for who they really are. So, and also that helped me to appreciate myself more, find more value in myself, not to cut anybody down, but just realize, like, hey, we're all just trying to figure this out.
No, that's real, because another thing you were saying, like me, I'm the same. I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. It's not a big city. It's a country city. It's the capital city of Florida, but nobody really cares and can tell. So, you know, we at the max. Matter of fact, our city is so small, when the students leave, half our population leave. So, you know, it's one of those. So I understand what you're saying when you're talking about coming from a small town and not necessarily really understanding the mindsets and the things that people from other areas have who become successful, because they've been able to experience a little more than we have within our small environment. So when you're able to come across that information, you're proud of yourself, especially when you apply it and you can see the growth in yourself. So I definitely understand that. So, all right, so those experiences led you to creating your publishing company called Fancy Thoughts LLC, or Fancy Thoughts LLC. And your publishing company actually publishes your magazine, which is SwagHer Mgazine. So when did you start your publishing company, and what actually inspired you to start your company? And the other part of that is, what other type of content do you publish besides SwagHer Mgazine?
Okay. So the magazine originally was founded in 2010, and it was under another name. I mean, it was still SwagHer Mgazine, but initially, like, the publishing company was Redbone Enterprises, LLC. Don't judge me, but that was the mindset I was in back then. So I ended up changing the name, like, you know, like a few years later, and there's still kind of some things going on with the name. But as far as for SwagHer itself, SwagHer kind of came about. This was during the swag surfing time, and I just love, like, I always remember seeing on one of the BET award shows or something when everybody came down the aisle, like, they were performing it, but just that vibe that I got off of that, I never forgot that. And so of course, everybody was saying the word swag, but then when I initially did our first cover, the graphic designer, we had SwagHer, like, at the end, G-E-R. And when he looked at it, he was like, this is too masculine for a female magazine. You know, he was like, we should change it to an H. So we became SwagHer. And as far as for the different content, now, the magazine is published online. Well, we have our website, which features, like, the smaller stories and more, like, news and inspiration, health, we do some entertainment, but I try to keep everything positive. Like, I feel like there's enough media that will drag us down as a society, so I try to make sure that all the content is uplifting or either educational. Now, we have begun to do a little more with politics, because it is becoming, you know, like, people need to know what's going on. So we're also promoting more content along the lines of that. And then we also just recently introduced our travel books, which are actually, they're smaller in size as well as content than the actual issue itself. And so the issue is printed bi-monthly, and then the travel books kind of fall in between. And in some ways, it's kind of like a vehicle for us as a small independent publishing company to, you know, be able to sustain throughout that time. But these issues are actually free. So it's more so ads, but then we'll recycle some of that content that maybe we had in the issue that we thought was just really good. And we'll, you know, maybe place a story or something in there, but then you also can get those travel books tailored. So say, like, there's someone in Houston that's trying to build their brand, and they want to be on the cover of a magazine. So you could buy that issue, and we'd also have some other advertisers in there as well, but you'd be on the cover. And then I'm also, the last thing is that, of course, I'm trying to get my book finished. I guess we'll talk about that later, but that's something else that I'll be publishing under the company.
Okay. Okay, so I want to ask this real quick, because my co-host came on the line, so he gonna jump in real quick. But I do want to ask this: what are some of the advantages of having your own publishing company, as far as being able to get your content out and being able to control the content? What have you experienced that are some of the advantages to you?
Well, for me, that's the main reason why I say independent, because I want to be able to speak, what I see as our truth, as opposed to, just going along with what the bigger media companies are pushing or whatever it is they're trying to sell. Because I just feel like we talk about being woke, but there's still so many more levels that we, have yet to reach. And so I try to make certain that I have creative control so that I can discuss these things that are often swept under the table. That's been my biggest thing personally. I don't know. I really can't think of much else because, as an independent publisher, then you still have to try to make all the funds and, you're trying to produce an issue, write an issue, and everything at the same time. But that creative control, to me, that's everything.
Yes. I mean, it is to me, because it's like, first of all, nobody gonna Suge Knight me, none of that stuff there. Nobody gonna be trying to Birdman me, none of the others. No, but it's being able to control our own voice, be able to control our own thoughts, and be able to control our own narratives. Because I was actually having a conversation yesterday with my good friend Professor Carl Tone Jones, and we were talking about how throughout the media, like mainstream media, how many of the black voices or black faces, whether they were for our community or not, nevertheless, these black faces are being taken away from these platforms. And, we was talking about going back to Melissa Harris Perry to even now with the closing down of TV One with Roland Martin, or not necessarily closing down, but taking the TV show off, Tavis Smiley. Just a lot of our faces are being taken out. So the ones that we do control, people who listen and support these outlets, support, so we can control our own voices, control our own narratives. So.
Yeah, I just have to say, I remember after the whole Jamel incident, Jamel Hill, is that her name?
Yeah.
And I remember seeing someone on Facebook being like, they were like, they're not mad or disappointed because we should have our own sports news network. And I was like, that makes such sense. At first I was kind of like, nah, why would you say that? You should be mad. But I thought that was such a great point. We should have our own mediums whereas we can speak freely about these things without worrying about an advertiser.
Right. I mean, that's so powerful and it's so true, because I'm not mad at Jamel Hill for what she did. I'm not mad at her, but like she was almost like forced to kick the hornet's nest to be able to get a point out, and she had to kick the hornet's nest. And if we had our own outlets, she would have been free to say what she wanted to say. And I'm just big on us being able to create our own, and not just being able to create it, but once it's created, support it thoroughly so it can grow and thrive just like these white media companies. So.
Right.
Yes. All right. Patrick, we know you won't. Don't be hiding, Pat.
I'm shamed because I'm late.
Hey, man, it's all good. It's all good.
Greetings, Patrick.
Hello. I apologize. I am a resident vampire.
Yeah.
And it took a monumentous effort for me to get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I still failed.
Hey.
It's okay.
Well, guess what? We get to throw you right in the fire.
I blame Joe. This is 100% Joe's fault. I take no responsibility for my actions today.
Hey, man, we know you one of them type of dudes. It's all good.
But I do like what I've been hearing in terms of the SwagHer Mgazine. I read the profile. I'm not trying to go too far back because I know you guys have already covered a lot. But what you guys were just speaking on, that was some powerful stuff about, what you were saying about maintaining control. That's something we're real big on. I'm huge on, even to the Jamel Hill situation and the black voices. That's funny. I was actually talking to PC last night. So like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that, because that's how I gets down. You want to talk to me, it need to be early in the AM or late in the PM. You feel me? Anyways, But yeah, he was talking about that we were talking about something similar with the black voices and whatnot, and how, you know, it's imperative that we have our own mediums and spaces for black voices to be heard. But for some reason, that doesn't seem to be appreciated the way it should be within the community. Hey, you own a publishing company. Why do you think that is?
For me, and this might, some people might not take this the best way, but I kind of feel like a lot of the times, you know, we as a black community tend to think that if it's not from the community of others, if it's not built by others, then it's not good enough. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, they there and they all right, but, you know, I want to go deal with People Magazine or so-and-so, you know, whoever else, just because we're, I guess, they find us more relatable, so that's almost equivalent to not being enough, or, you know, aspiring high enough.
Yeah, I agree, because and my frustration sometimes and my rants when I'm talking to Pat and we ranting, like I often say, and we often see it that a lot of times our people aren't appreciated until they're validated by other people. Like I was, you know, I was looking at some of these new black mayors and some of these other people and all these mediums and things that we have, and I meet a lot of great people who do a lot of great things, but they just don't have a lot of shine or attention. And I think we need to support people from the beginning. We don't need to wait till they become famous or validated by others, because those people probably have become bitter by then, because they're like, my own community don't support me until I become popular. So my thing is, if you meet somebody or you come across something and you think it's great, don't just tell the person that it's great, support it.
Yeah, you just said a mouthful there.
Yeah, you did. I mean, both you guys did, though. I mean, because it's true that we need to be validated, and it's, you know, like, I think we have, as a community, we suffer from, I'm still debating whether it's a fear of failure or a fear of success or some odd combination of both, but for some reason we definitely don't support each other until we become these major entities that are, you know, like, by the time I'm doing $100 million in business, it's hard to contact me. Like, it's hard for you to reach out to me in the way that you would have been able to reach out to me. It's harder for you to have the effect that you would have been able to have had you reached out to me when I was only doing $10 in business, or whatever the case might be. But for some reason, we don't want to be associated with small entities, especially small black entities on the startup level. We want, you know, and maybe that's the microwave mentality too, where people just, they want instant success, instant fame, and the easiest way to get that is to attach to something that's already at that level. I don't know. That's my question.
I have to say, though, I think that that's a great point as well, and that instant success, to me, I kind of also think that kind of goes along with, if people can, okay, like my Facebook following, if they see me going through things, then it's like, oh, well, you know what I mean? Like, it's not the same as the people that are still going through things, but in those higher offices. But to them, it's like, oh, those people don't go through anything. But I see her struggling with this, and that. So that means, you know, I'm going to skip her and then move on to these people because they got all their stuff together. Everybody has, you know, everybody has their own little trials and tribulations. But to them, it's not being able to see that. I think that kind of makes them more trusting, or that brand may seem more credible because of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely
mystique does play a part.
Yeah, image and all of that, because, like you said, people have their role models and the things they look up to, and, you know, typically if you seem human or you seem like you're like them, then that kind of normalizes you, and that kind of lessens the brightness of your brand in a lot of people's eyes compared to a larger brand. That's deep. You know what? We might need to have a show on that, Joe.
I know, right? So you always come write that down. So speaking of brands, I do want to go more into your brand. So many people aspire to be many things, right? But starting a magazine. Now, I haven't met many. I've only met one person outside of yourself who has actually started, who had the idea of starting a magazine and went through with the idea and everything. And so, why did you decide to start your own magazine? And well, you already told us why you named it SwagHer, but what made you want to have your own magazine?
I would have to say, like, I've always been a writer. I remember writing my first story in the first grade. So initially I thought I'd be an author, and I loved reading. So it was like, for me, again, coming from a small town, that's how I was able to learn more about the world through reading. And so basically I just, I'm not going to say I just kind of fell into it, but when I first started SwagHer, I will say initially I was recording my interviews because I was too nervous to write them. I didn't know how people would be about my writing. I was scared of them criticizing and so on until I actually showed it to someone on Twitter that I admired, and she was like, it's good, but you ain't writing anything. And I was like, well, I didn't think about it that way because I just had like a lot of video format sort of for people to check out. And then I started writing. But I'm trying to remember the rest of your question because it was something else I wanted to tell you about that.
So basically, like, why did you start it?
Oh, okay. But the thing is, because I love writing, but I also just I don't like doing just one thing. I really am a creative. I kind of consider myself to be 50% artist and then 50% business person. So, like, with the magazine, Essence was a big inspiration because not only is it a magazine, but then they have Essence Fest, then they have other branches of it. And I thought a magazine would allow me to also be able to have those other branches. If I just wrote books, it wouldn't be the same as also wanting to put on an award show. But with the magazine, you can do all of that. So it just really allowed me a lot of flexibility.
That's good. That's good. So, like, it's like the vision and all the passion that comes up when you talk about your magazine. That's great. Because you know how you meet people who tell you about something that they have, and there's no confidence behind what they're saying. I want to do this, and I've always wanted to do this, and they're just still in the stage of I just want to, and I just want to. So when you meet people who have done it, but still, not only have you done it, but you still have grander visions for your brand. I mean, that's refreshing. Like you say, I'm still in my small town, but luckily I've been able to find and network with different people who dream big, like myself, and have done big. But it's like, that small town thing. So I'm always doing my best to attach myself to people who think big. So, and they're right there.
That's important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It sounded to me like you just said you wanted to leech off her.
Here you go.
I mean,
I didn't take it that way.
See, Pat. Pat got a metal plate.
That's what I heard, though.
So. Okay. All right.
Hey,
okay. Huh?
Don't shoot the messenger, man.
All right. Or the sheriff.
You can shoot the deputy, though.
Go ahead, man. Talk.
I am talking. See, Joe, look, we're not going to do this while we got a guest on the line. We're not, Joe. I just woke up. We having a good interview. She hitting people with this wonderful, wonderful personality, all this passion and excitement, and you trying to beef with me in the middle of all of that.
Man.
Exactly. So,
whatever.
Moving forward. Why did you target your magazine? Your magazine is targeted to the black community, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So why did you feel that was necessary for there to be, like you mentioned, Essence being one of your something that was a huge kind of inspiration or something that you drew on? Why did you feel like there was a need for another black magazine in that space?
Oh, okay. Well, of course, I mean, like I said, I wanted to be able to promote more positive images of black women and men, but also just the neat thing I think about SwagHer is it's wrote by, well, most of our content comes from either people that are trying to inspire change or, inspire others, or just people who want to uplift as opposed to just share gossip. So I feel like there was a bit, and there still is a space for that. I mean, of course, there's been a lot of other media outlets to come up after us, but I just feel like at that time I wasn't really seeing that. Now, I mean, of course, there was still essence there, but another neat thing I think about the magazine is, for me, because I do write a lot of the content, it's written by a woman that's still growing and learning about life. Like, I don't try to profess to know everything, I'm still discovering myself, as well as, most of the writers are like, they've had a renewed or they've grown in their mindset. So it's more like a lot of free spirits, a lot of good spirits there that I think allow us to still have this space and, and kind of make it different.
I feel that.
Mm-hmm. From a more a standpoint of the everyday black person, rather than people who, like we were talking about earlier, people who we would often look to or put on a pedestal, or think that people may not experience what we go through on a everyday basis. But when you read SwagHer, you will be able to get the best of both worlds, because you got great writers, but these are also people who go through the everyday things like you, so you get to experience that as well.